So let me set the table a little bit. I was thinking about it as we were coming up, and I think we can all agree it's really hard to stay current in this industry, let alone innovate and then be able to predict future trends. So not an easy task. Dean Vegilante, Chief Digital Officer at AnchorTrading. We are a independent, veteran-owned corporate trade omni-channel media agency. And before I let my panelists introduce themselves, let's think about it as we go through our topics and questions as what are we doing today, and then a lens of maybe what's happening next level, future state. So Roger, Stacey, please introduce yourselves.
Well, okay, I'll go first. I'm Roger Garcia, and Valda was actually one of my team members when we worked at Home Care at Colgate. That was my first job in CPG, so pretty cool connection. And Tom back there, we worked in beer together in Chicago when I worked for Miller Coors. So interesting to see some old folks that I've worked with in the past. But my current role is I run a brand. So Hamilton Beach is our corporate, and we have a bunch of acquired brands, licensed brands. So some of you might be aware of Chi for the hair product. Well, we do the irons for garment care. We also have Brita, and we do water filtration for the home. We have Clorox for air purification. So some of these are licensed and some of them are acquired. Weston is the brand that I manage. We were acquired. So 10 years ago, Hamilton Beach acquired the company. We're a little different. Most of you probably know of the toasters and blenders and hand mixers, and that's kind of our legacy. Motorized and heated products for the kitchen. I work on a lifestyle brand, focused on farm to table, field to table, and we really make products for people who want to really own the process. So make their own burgers, make their own sausage, make their own sauces, their own canning, homesteaders, harvesters. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's kind of what I do, my branding side and the product side. So I manage both sides.
Great. Stacey.
Hi, I'm Stacey Kane. The only thing I know how to do is restaurant marketing, and I started at it probably when Amtrak's reservation system was born. So a really, really long time. I'm a fractional CMO, so I go into small brands. It's fun because you guys are talking about like actual budgets, and my brands may not have any marketing budget. They may just still be bootstrapping. And so some of my brands are as small as 4 restaurants. And my biggest brand will celebrate their 100th restaurant opening next month in Oregon, Ziggy's Coffee. And by myself with a team of really spirited freelancers, we handle close to 250 restaurants across the United States. And this fractional work started because during the pandemic, there were all these little brands that came out and said, oh crap, we've never marketed before. We need to talk to our customers. And so that's kind of how this fractional business was built. And we're really focusing a lot right now on what does brand mean 4 years post-pandemic. So it's very interesting that yesterday I got a call to be on this panel.
Great context, and thanks a lot. And listen, future thinking. Jay, you can pay me later, but let's start with AI, right? Let's lean a little bit. Let's talk about what your brands are doing today with it, and then potentially where you may see it hitting on the next iteration. Stacey, you want to kick it off?
So I think the one thing that you probably need to know about the restaurant industry kind of in general is we're always about 12 months behind in technology. You would think that we would be kind of on the forefront, but normally kind of like brands in the online space are always way ahead of us. So where we're seeing AI is in being used in things like, especially with our small brands, our customer retention, in customer retention applications. So somebody makes a complaint on Google, whereas historically that was done by a human. replying directly to that guest. A lot of that is being generated by AI through various different customer retention platforms. So that is super helpful. However, as somebody who loves branding and brands, how much of it do we really want to be? How much do we want AI talking directly to a customer, even though it's super smart and it knows your brand? How much do we really want to give over to technology? So that's kind of the downside of it.
Great. And I think, Roger, on your world, I think it actually gets really interesting because you mentioned the farm to table and some of that stuff, and that's cutting edge in itself as restaurants are developing.
Yeah, on our end, AI is something that we're approaching with a lot of caution, primarily because we want to make sure we have a genuine relationship with consumers. So what we've been doing is when we're generating new product concepts, we're actually going to just throw them out into the AI world and see, well, what comes back. One of our major competitors is Ninja, Power XL, and they're very innovative brands. Instapot, another very innovative brand. So we want to see, well, if they had that idea, what would it look like? Because that's kind of the benefit of having that AI is like anybody can create new products and concepts. On the more like impacting the business, currently what we're doing is we're scraping a lot of reviews, a lot of voice of the consumer. Everyone, 60% of America is on Amazon. You can read a lot of reviews. But there's also a lot of reviews in social media and comments made. So really scraping that, it's important because my role, especially wearing the product side, is I am responsible for the product. So if there's a product that isn't working correctly, how do I fix that? So I think AI is helping us do that faster. We've always had software, we have quality teams, but they have a lot of products to manage, hundreds of products to look at. So I think currently that's something we want to continue to do. I think future state, I think AI is going to give us a lot of leverage in the communication side. We jokingly have pulled some ads and said, what would this generate? And we look at it like, that's just so disingenuous. That's not how we see the consumer doing, prepping that food at home. So it's good because we know the consumer, so we're like, that's not ready, that we wouldn't show that. So it's a good litmus test for now. It's kind of fun, and we only do it in-house, so it's just fun to do that with when we're in a presentation, like, hey, look at this concept that came up.
Yeah. Stacey, on some of your restaurants, are they leaning in on this, or?
Some of my restaurants are really old, so I'm sorry, that's the wrong way to put it. So all of my restaurants are super fresh. Some of my restaurant brands have been around for a really long time, so they're a little bit cautious about using AI, but they're also very curious about using it. So we're definitely, like I said, in customer retention. We'll use it as a marketing team. I don't want to put my copywriter out of business or myself out of business, but we may use, to save time, AI to generate some ideas. And for example, if we're having trouble coming up with a tagline for a campaign or the wording on a specific recipe, we might put it through, like a ChatGPT situation, and then have 100. It's about the speed of it that is so incredible. So we'll put it through ChatGPT or a similar program, come out with 100 different variables, put them in front of, the cranky board of directors or client, and then that will lead to another conversation. So oftentimes for us, AI is a starting point.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think if we strip out AI for a minute and we kind of move into digital transformation technology, you had a great anecdote when we were chatting
yesterday.
And how some of your clients were leveraging the self-service kiosk. And to me, and I gave you my story of, it just drives me nuts. I just don't like it. But yeah. It would be great if you share a little bit of the experience there.
So talking about trends, the biggest trends in the restaurant space right now, first of all, how many of you have seen The Bear? Okay, that's all real. That pressure, that insanity, no matter what segment you are in the restaurant industry, that is all real. And so you've got to be a little bit crazy to get into this industry as your career. And so with that said, one of the things that we are struggling with from various angles is labor. How do we get people to man the front of house for our quick service and fast casual restaurants, even fine dining, quite frankly? And so between that and although I'm incredibly supportive of increased minimum wage so that everybody can have a living wage in this country, every action has a consequence. And so what a lot of brands, specifically, you can take a look at California, are starting to integrate kiosk ordering probably quicker than we would have. So you go into brands where their core value is based on connecting with the guest, and now you are in front of something that is basically a giant iPad. And it takes 17 steps to get your salad from fast casual brand to be named later. And so what happens is that how do you stay consistent with your brand promises when you're no longer really in the hospitality business? And so that is happening a lot, and we're seeing some legacy brands that are really struggling with that. I won't name the brand because a friend of mine who is going to come to this works for that brand, and she's not here right now, so I don't want to talk trash about it. But I literally walked into a fast casual restaurant. There were no people in the front of the house. There were just 3 kiosks. The demographic of the people sitting in that restaurant was 65 plus. And they were lost at how to get their soup and salad combination. And so I think that we are going, until we can figure out a way to make kiosk ordering really more hospitable, these brands are going to really not truly delivering on their brand values. So I think a lot of things are converging at the same time.
I couldn't agree. And then they ask you for the tip, right?
Yes.
You're frustrated. You get to the
Yes.
thing. You finally get there. And the last step is like, how much you'd like to tip? 20%. And I'm like, what am I tipping? Like, anyway, it's a tangent. But
I respect it.
yeah, I think that's really well said. And Roger, on the product side, you're vetting technologies, right? You're thinking about what's coming.
Yeah, so on the digital transformation side, one of the interesting things of having been an acquired brand is, ERP. So you have this platform that does all the supply chain. It manages all the custom orders. That was a legacy Hamilton Beach platform. And Weston came out of Cleveland using a Great Plains, totally different platform. So I've been on this for 7 years, my journey with this brand. For the past, probably the first 4 years, all we were doing was integrating platforms and getting out of the old legacy ERP. And I say that because in order to do the transformation, you have to have all your resources aligned. So it's only this year. So I've done 3 web refreshes for my website. We do direct-to-consumer sales as well. So it's not only brand building, but also revenue driving. This is the first year we're actually going into the next iteration of our web platform. And our goal is really to create a loyalty stream. I sell vacuum sealers, and one of the things you get is vacuum bags. The more you use them, the more you want them. Well, all bags are kind of generic. There's density 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter, but they all pretty much can function in the same way. But because of that, someone can just buy a no-brand Amazon purchase product from a 3P seller. So we want to make sure we keep that relationship and do the subscription. I've looked at composting. That's something, a category I've looked at and evaluated. And pods, there's composting pods. So there's a lot on the pod side, and that's kind of the retention piece. Is like, if Keurig would have it their way, that you would never go get a Dunkin' Donut pod. You'd always have a Keurig pod. So that's the value that we want to create, because they will create a sticky consumer. On the flip side of things too, what's important is post-transaction, post-purchase. If your product breaks down, it's kind of sad. Like, some things you buy immediately. My toaster burnt this morning. I can just go to Target on the way to work, come back with a toaster. But some things are not that easy to find, or some things are more like there isn't readily available. You have to wait 2-3 weeks to get it. So we want to make sure that we have a consumer engagement that really stays in a continuous conversation with that consumer. Also connecting back to social media and back to using AI and scraping, understanding some things are positive. So like when we had the Barbie movie, all of a sudden our team on the Hamilton Beach side got all of our pink products and said, we have an assortment already of pink. Let's throw that out there. So all of that is, things that we can do. And again, at the end of the day, we're really here to generate revenue. So when we prioritize things, it's about how do we generate revenue? How do we maximize the dollars we have? So when I think about transformation is how do I get a consumer to buy from me? My margins are a lot better for me than if I sell it through a third party. So that's another enhancing proposition for the business.
And clearly that's a fine line to juggle when you think about the D2C aspect of the business, but then your trusted partners, right? And what they're doing and how you're complementing each other in the marketplace. You talked about leaning into that social media. We talked a bunch this morning about CTV. That's growing. That's being heavily invested in. What do you see pulling back on in the world of the products and where you're going to spend money and not?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're actually evaluating. We have one partner. So the origin of the brand was hunters, people who hunt, harvest. We used to sell private label to Cabela's. Cabela's is kind of the destination for hunters and processors and homesteaders. In the 7 years I've been running this, we've moved over to more of the foodie, home chefs, do-it-yourselfers, people that are inspired by what they see on TV and or where they travel and they come back from a country. Like, I want to learn how to do that, or I can make it, and I want to remember how do I make that pasta or that sauce. But really, we had to have a relationship with that core consumer. So that's our TV relationship. It's Meat Eater. His name's Steve Ranella. We integrate with the products being featured in terms of once they've finished the hunt. We're not really part of the hunt. We're part of bringing it home and sharing it at the table. That's kind of our goal. That's the whole farm to table, field to table, water to table. But we feel that influencers are yet a more genuine connection, especially when we try to go to more general market, more mainstream, because you might have a sausage recipe you inherited that's 100 years old. Well, we have a tool to help you make that sausage. It doesn't necessarily mean that you hunted and you came back with this catch and now you're going to process it. It's the product, the tool itself is going to be the same, but who we're going to use to influence that conversation is how we're going to diversify. And this year we've tested a lot. It started last year in the fall. I launched a slow cooker smoker, which is the first product that actually you can smoke in your house. We did it because I was looking at outdoor smokers like Traeger, Bradley. I looked at propane and gas and looked at a variety of things. And we can't really compete with these, brands that are established, but we have a strong slow cooker business, or crock is what most people, recognize it as. So we found a way to actually use that same vessel to smoke, and you can smoke your food in your apartment, in your condo, anywhere. Or if you want, you take it on your trailer if you're traveling and so forth. So that was one of our first big campaigns in the fourth quarter of last year, and it did extremely well. It drove us organic connection back to the brand. It drove almost 200 product reviews as well as people started talking about it. So because of that, we're like, this is a more genuine, rich connection. The hardest part is vetting. And because we were in the hunting space, Second Amendment is a big issue that we don't want to touch. Because of that, when we vet some of our influencers, we don't touch anything that has to do with politics or religion. So it's a filter. And I think that's where our role as a brand person or managing the brand equity is how do we preserve our brand, still have a genuine conversation with that end user, whoever it may be.
Very well said. And Stacey, he mentions customer loyalty. No matter what the size of the restaurant, right? It's about the customer. It's about keeping them loyal to the brand. How do you advise your clients in that area?
Well, it's kind of back it all the way up. It starts really a franchisee will call and say, I need help with marketing, or I need help with sales. And the first thing we say is, okay, what's going on in the four walls? Are you delivering on whatever that brand promise is? Is the food good? Is your customer service good? Is your, before we ever look at, to be named loyalty program or digital advertising. We really start, every marketing question starts with how are operations and what is guest sentiment right now before we even begin the conversation on marketing. And then we have every single brand I work with has a completely different tech stack.
Right. They're all unicorns. They're all
Absolutely.
separately and
1,000%.
You know, I think, and I want to be mindful of time and let people answer questions, but I thought about, we talked about Gen Z this morning. I thought about coming into the future, right? Going out even farther, which is what I learned, Generation Alpha.
Yeah.
Right. So that's next. Right. And I feel like whenever I have these conversations, sustainability, I know it's important to anchor, ethical values, these things that generally don't come up on marketing panels, especially digital marketing panels, have been really front and center. How are you guys looking at that and in context of your clients and Roger and your Hamilton Beach? Like, are you leaning into this, or is this some other department, or is it now getting into your minds as you think about marketing?
No, it's definitely something that we think about. And I would say that it's probably not just limited to the alphas who are coming in. I think that there's this, look, the world is a dumpster fire right now, right? Like, we are all stressed out and freaked out probably all the time and overstimulated. And we all want to know, like, am I eating the best food possible? We're all thinking about kind of, whether it's we're being indulgent or not, like what's going into our bodies. We want to know that the companies that we're dealing with are being transparent with us. And so I'm trying to push my brands to be as transparent as possible and honest and authentic as possible, because that's what consumers want. I mean, people don't believe advertising anymore. They kind of want to connect with the brand on a way more authentic level. And so it's kind of a bigger, kind of broader strategy than just, are we talking about sustainability? Right. Well, I mean, there's certain things we have to be sustainable about. We can't use plastic straws anymore, as much as I miss them from my McDonald's soda in the morning. But it makes sense. And I think my brands, again, because they're so small and they're all kind of being scrappy, are kind of doing the best that they can.
Also, and I think I would rather use that organic straw than use a self-service kiosk. So if we're going to lean on one of them, Roger, on your side.
So sustainability is an interesting one because it's multifaceted. The one that we've continuously invested in is land conservation. Going back to the origins of hunting, and most people don't realize is that when you get a fishing license, you get a hunting license, that money goes back into that public land, which in the spring or summer you may use to hike or ride your bike or just go on the lake. That's what preserves or maintains those trails and maintains that park that you may be using, that the hunter may be using in the wintertime. So land conservation is one way we do it. So we partner up with a lot of nonprofits. We support them by giving them product for them to raise funds for their banquets. So a lot of it is that they get a product, so they get the brand experience. We connect, and some of our influencers do come out of that pool as well, back to being authentic to that consumer. So that's one facet. Another facet is the product itself, and I think I like the analogy of you got to look at the back of the house first. So when I started, I had 76 factories in China making products for me, and I had 1,000 SKUs. I currently have 300 SKUs, 100 that are high performers. Out of those 100 SKUs, I only have 25 factories now, 5 of which are shared with Hamilton Beach, 20 of which are mine. And you may ask yourself, like, how do you reduce 750 SKUs and how do you reduce 50 suppliers? Like, why would you do that and still grow your business? And it really comes down to, we all know that we buy things that are made in China. How many of us really think about who is that person making it? How would I feel if it was somebody who was underage? How would I feel if it was somebody who was locked up in a factory that has only one exit and there was a fire? So BSCI is an agency we use, and it's basically they audit. And over the past 7 years, and I finished closing one of the last factories last year. If they'd failed the audits, we exited. If they didn't let us audit, and these audits are by surprise. It's kind of the same thing like the restaurant business. The health safety shows up on Monday, and you report it by the end of the day. So that was hard to do, but it was important to do. So back to cleaning up your stuff on the back end before you ever think about talking it publicly. And that's a reality. We are made in China products. So there's a lot of other packaged goods that are in the kitchen appliance space. And we have evaluated packaging. There's a lot of more products that are coming in brown boxes that are compostable. That's a harder thing to do because our suppliers don't just make products for me. They make products for other companies. So it's really changing the mindset of those China suppliers to procure more sustainable packaging materials. On the product side, I definitely could influence that. And what I do is I focus on the brand's position is reconnect with real food. What I promise you is long-lasting products that you can count on. There are people who told me they have some of our products for 10 years, for a long time, and they keep using them. So we want a product that you don't dispose of, but you actually trade up when you need to because you're using it more often. But whatever you have, you're going to have for a very long time. I kind of call it the Ford F-150 model. And that's really that's my sustainability in the product side. We test everything for life. So if I have a product, I kind of take an average use for the consumer and then I multiply that. So we may take a product up to 5 years before it dies, but we know that consumer will never use it in that manner. But that's our approach to creating sustainability within a product. If the product doesn't have a 4.3 star or better rating, we kill the product. We don't continue with it unless we could improve it. But the most important thing is the product has to be reliable. So knowing that it's not going to end up in the dump. When we take returns, though, we actually do go through a whole process to dispose of them sustainably and part out and get all the scrap things that can be recycled. So we do recycle when people return a product to us.
Excellent. Do we have time for a question? We got one question. I can't see your name tag.
I'm loud. I don't know. So thinking about the title, future trends in brand. There's a lot of talk today about shoppable TV, and it's becoming easier for consumer to buy stuff in their world. You guys touched on though, in the store, technology is effing up the brand. It's a horrible experience. Where does that reconcile? How does that fix? For unnamed fast casual Panera. How does that fix?
Chipotle.
I think, and let me rephrase this, because every brand I know is kind of looking at this in-store technology right now, specifically kiosk ordering. And I think what it is really balancing that human touch so that there's always a friendly face. There's always hospitality involved in the experience, whether it's through every single touch point, because restaurants are very much we need to meet you where you are, whether that's online ordering, drive-through, depending on the brand, in person, all of it. So just making sure that the brand knows who it is and that they're not straying from it. And so I think also really figuring out this labor model and profitability, that's really what it comes down to, right? That's why there aren't people in front of the house for unnamed brand. It's a dollars and cents thing. So really kind of figuring out what that model looks like so that you're not losing brand trust or brand experience. That's kind of a not really optimistic answer, but sorry.
Excellent. So thank you, Brand Innovators, for including us in your agenda. McCormick for the experience.
Thank you.
I can't wait to hit the store.